Hello student armies, welcome back to Diksha Vedantu channel. This is your master teacher Navya, and in this today's session we will be continuing with respiratory system in humans. Right? So already we have started this concept, the respiration in human beings, in the previous session itself, right, wherein I spoke about human respiratory system, the mechanism of breathing, respiratory volume, respiratory capacity and all that has been covered in the previous session itself, right. In today's session we will be focusing on the exchange of gases, wherein we will see that how the oxygen is being transported within our body, how the carbon dioxide is being transported within our body, right, and then we'll also see that how respiration is being regulated within our body, and then finally we'll be studying about the respiratory diseases. So this is going to be the agenda of this particular session. So those students who have missed the previous session, you can watch that session once again, and I have provided the link in the description. Right? Okay. So yeah, like you all know that the Vedantu offline centers has been opened throughout the nation. Right? So the students who are interested, you want personal attention, you want to clarify your doubts, and if you are a student who would love to attend offline classes, then do join the Vedantu offline centers, right? You can find the nearest offline center and you can get your admission done there. Okay, for much, and the seats are limited, students, so quick. Right, be quick. And then in case if you want more information regarding the admission, then you can contact this number that is provided here. Okay, yeah, with that we'll get started with our today's session. Fine. So before starting the session, once I would like to confirm that, am I audible? Let me check that. Yes. Fine. Let's get started with our today's session. See here, already have covered the respiratory capacity in the previous session itself. Right? In today's session, we'll be starting with the exchange of gases, and then we'll see the transport of oxygen, transport of carbon dioxide and all that. Fine. So the exchange of gases. See, I've already, in your class 10th, you have already studied, right, the respiration, human respiratory system, and then by now you all have understood that where exactly the exchange of gases happening within our body. One is at the alveoli and the other one is between the tissues and the blood capillary. But the main exchange of gases that you will have to consider in your respiratory system is the exchange of gases that is happening in the alveoli, which is present in the lungs. See, alveoli, they are the primary site for the exchange of gases. Why? Because we inhale the atmospheric air, and then what happens? The oxygen will get absorbed in the lungs. Right? And finally from our body, the carbon dioxide will be carried by the blood itself, and when the deoxygenated blood reaches the lung, what happens? The carbon dioxide from the blood capillary diffuses into alveoli, and then we exhale that carbon dioxide out of our body. Right? See, the exchange of gases also occurs between blood and tissue, but the primary site for the exchange of gases is alveoli, because it is from lungs only we are getting oxygen. Right? See, the oxygen and carbon dioxide, they are exchanged in these sites. How? By simple diffusion. Diffusion process is involved. What is diffusion? It is the movement of substance from a high concentrated region to lower concentrated region. That is diffusion. So now let's say that when you inhale, what happens? The oxygen gets accumulated in the alveoli, and when the blood that is carrying carbon dioxide reaches that alveolar region, what happens? In the blood capillary, the carbon dioxide concentration is more, whereas in the alveoli, oxygen concentration is more. So what happens? The oxygen which is present in large amount in the alveoli, it diffuses into blood capillary, whereas carbon dioxide which is present in the blood capillary in larger amount will diffuse into the alveoli. That's how the diffusion is happening, right? And also the pressure that is contributed by individual gases, a individual gas in a mixture of gases is called as partial pressure. This term is very important. What is partial pressure? See here, one more thing students, when you inhale, see you all know that in our atmosphere, it is not just oxygen, it is not just carbon dioxide, there are other gaseous molecules, right? There is nitrogen, right? There are so many, there are mixture of gases that is present in our atmosphere. Then why is it like this, that when you inhale, our body will absorb only oxygen? Why? It's because what is there in our blood? There is red blood cell, right? What does red blood cell have? Red blood cell is carrying hemoglobin, and hemoglobin, it has got affinity towards oxygen only and not towards any other gaseous molecule. That's why oxygen will get absorbed, whereas the other gases will be exhaled out along with the carbon dioxide itself, but then the carbon dioxide concentration will be more. Why? Because in our body, the oxygen has been utilized during reactions and the carbon dioxide will be released as byproduct. Okay, that carbon dioxide will be exhaled out. Okay, so there are mixture of gases that is present, and each gas, it exerts some pressure. That pressure which is exerted by one particular gas, that pressure is called as partial pressure, and that is represented as PO2. The PO2 indicates the partial pressure that is exerted by oxygen. Okay, and then PCO2 indicates the partial pressure that is exerted by the carbon dioxide. Clear with that? Okay. Hi Chandrasekhar. Wait. Now, about 97% of oxygen is transported by, it is red blood cells, which is present in the blood, right? The remaining 3% of the oxygen is carried in dissolved state through plasma. You all know, right? See, till now in your class 10th, you have studied like this, that oxygen has been carried by red blood cell. Why? Because in red blood cell, hemoglobin is present. Hemoglobin, it is a iron-rich pigment which has got strong affinity towards oxygen. Therefore, the red blood cells bind to the oxygen, and then the red blood cell will deliver that oxygen to different tissues, right? But then, see, actually it is 97% of oxygen has been carried by red blood cell, whereas the other 3% is dissolved in the plasma. You all know, right? Hi Lalit, good afternoon. So you all know, right, that what is a blood? Blood is a fluid connective tissue. Why is it called as connective tissue? Because it connects the organ within our body, right? And then it is fluidy in nature. Why? Because the matrix that is present in this connective tissue is fluidy. That is your blood. That fluidy matrix is called as plasma. And then there are blood cells. So there is liquid component and there is cellular component in the blood. Though cellular component is also called as formed elements, right? Because they are formed in your bone marrow. Now, so plasma, what was plasma doing? That also delivers, that carries nutrients. Certain gaseous molecules also had told, if you have not forgotten, I have already explained that the plasma also carries certain gaseous molecule in which the 3% is oxygen. Okay, and then like you all know that carbon dioxide, it has got high capacity to dissolve. Therefore, their first preference is dissolving in the plasma. When the carbon dioxide, it diffuses from tissue to blood capillaries. In blood capillaries, the blood will be flowing, right? So when it diffuses into the blood, what happens is that its first preference is it should dissolve in the plasma. Alright, so here nearly 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide is actually transported by red blood cells, whereas remaining 70% is carried as bicarbonate ion. When the carbon dioxide dissolves in the plasma, it forms bicarbonate. So 70% out of that 100% of carbon dioxide, 70% of the carbon dioxide, it dissolves in the plasma. And when it gets dissolved, it forms bicarbonate ion. So it is transported as in the bicarbonate form. Okay, whereas remaining 20 to 25% is been carried by red blood cell. Okay, but then red blood cell has got more affinity towards oxygen only. Keep that in mind. Okay, about 7% of the carbon dioxide is carried in dissolved state throughout the plasma. See now what happens once the carbon dioxide diffuses from tissues to the blood, then what happens? The blood carries that carbon dioxide to the alveoli, like the lung region. First, the deoxygenated blood will be carried by veins to the heart, and from heart, the deoxygenated blood is taken by pulmonary artery to the lungs. So what is happening there in the lungs? There, over there, this blood capillary, it surrounds the alveoli. Right now, the blood capillary carrying the deoxygenated blood, which is surrounding the alveoli. What happens? The carbon dioxide that is present in the deoxygenated blood diffuses into alveoli. So it is in dissolved state only. That is bicarbonate. Okay, clear with that? And then, like I told you, the hemoglobin is a red colored iron containing pigment that is present in red blood cells. Right. So the oxygen, it can bind with hemoglobin. Why? To form oxyhemoglobin. So hemoglobin is a pigment which is present. It is an iron-rich pigment and it is proteinaceous in nature, that is present in your red blood cells. When the hemoglobin combines with the oxygen, it forms oxyhemoglobin. Okay. Each hemoglobin molecules can carry maximum of 4 molecules of oxygen. So you must remember this. Each hemoglobin molecule can carry. So one hemoglobin can carry 4 oxygen molecule. Okay. Binding of oxygen with hemoglobin is primarily related to the partial pressure of the oxygen. So now the oxygen is binding to that hemoglobin, right? Because yeah, hemoglobin is built in such a way that it has got affinity towards oxygen. Along with that, the oxygen's partial pressure also plays important role in binding up of oxygen to the hemoglobin. Okay, clear with that? Fine. Okay. See, you can see this curve. It is a sigmoidal curve which has been obtained when the percentage saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen is plotted against partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, like you can see here, I told you one hemoglobin can carry 4 oxygen molecule. Now let's say that all the hemoglobin have been, see, it has till here, till this region, it is getting, yes, it can bind to the oxygen. But after sometimes what happens, there will be no enough hemoglobin for binding that oxygen. Alright, that time what happens, it reaches the saturation level and this is that saturation level. And like I've already told you that the binding up of oxygen to the hemoglobin, one is, yes, hemoglobin is built in such a way that, yes, it is built in such a way that it has got strong affinity towards oxygen. Along with that, the partial pressure of the oxygen also plays important role, right? So that with that you can measure that how much of hemoglobin is present and how the oxygen is being bound to the hemoglobin, and when it will reach saturation level, all that can be studied. Okay. Now, see, this curve is called as oxygen dissociation curve, and it is useful. Why? To study the effect of factors like partial pressure of carbon dioxide and even H+ ion on binding of oxygen. Alright. So this is the curve that is obtained, which helps in studying that how other factors are affecting the binding of oxygen with hemoglobin, or else in the formation of oxyhemoglobin. That is the use of this curve, and this curve is called as oxygen dissociation curve. Students, you must, in your class 11th, you will get to study about so many curves as well, so many graphs are there. Okay, and in your competitive exam, you tend to get questions from these graphs as well. At times, in case if you're not thorough with the concept, then such questions, that graphical questions will be, very much confusing. So from now itself, you should be thorough with the concepts. Okay, fine. And now, see, in alveoli, where the oxygen concentration is high. See, the partial pressure of oxygen is high in the alveoli, right? Whereas the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is less in the alveoli, and also H plus concentration is less, right? It is lower. The factors are all favorable for the formation of oxyhemoglobin. So now for the oxygen to bind with hemoglobin, these are the factors. One is the partial pressure of the oxygen has to be high, partial pressure of the carbon dioxide should be less. Along with that, even the H plus has to be lower, the H plus, and also like it is lesser H plus concentration, lower temperature. Even the lower temperature is needed, only then the oxyhemoglobin will be formed. Whereas in the tissues what happens? See, already the reactions would have taken place, right? The respiration would have happened in the tissues within our body. So already ATP will be synthesized. Along with that, the carbon dioxide is also released as the byproduct, right? Now that carbon dioxide gets accumulated in the tissue. Therefore, what happens within the tissues? The partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high, whereas oxygen is less, and over there even the H plus concentration is higher. H plus concentration, higher temperature exists. Okay, so this is the favorable condition for what? For the dissociation of oxygen from oxyhemoglobin. Okay, so this is important for dissociation of oxygen from hemoglobin. What are all the factors that are necessary? Or else for the formation of oxyhemoglobin, what are all the factors that are necessary? You must know this. For the formation of oxyhemoglobin, partial pressure of oxygen should be high, partial pressure of carbon dioxide should be less. Very simple. Whereas for the dissociation of the oxygen in the oxyhemoglobin, there the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide should be high, whereas the partial pressure of the oxygen has to be low. That time the oxygen, it dissociates from the hemoglobin and then it will diffuse into the tissues. So this clearly indicates that the oxygen, it gets bound to the hemoglobin. Where? In the lung surface. Why? Because when you inhale the atmospheric oxygen, what happens? Atmospheric air, what happens? The lung, it absorbs oxygen, right? And gets dissociated at the tissue. Why is it getting dissociated at the tissue? Because in tissues, the oxygen concentration is less, whereas carbon concentration is more. There it gets dissociated, right? So every 100 ml of oxygenated blood can deliver around 5 ml of oxygen to the tissue under normal physiological condition. Even this one you will have to remember. Okay, every 100 ml of oxygenated blood, it can deliver 5 ml of oxygen. 100 ml of oxygenated blood can deliver 5 ml of oxygen to the tissue under normal physiological condition. You must remember these units because you can expect such questions in your MCQs. Okay, clear with that? So this is how, these are the factors that are responsible for the formation of oxyhemoglobin. Clear with that? Okay. So now let's see that how the carbon dioxide is being transported. Fine. So till now what did we study? We studied about exchange, like where exactly the exchange of gases is happening within our body. The primary site is alveoli, and also between the body tissue and the blood capillary. In these sites, the exchange of gases is taking place, right? Along with that, the partial pressure of that individual gas also plays important role. We understood that as well. And then we started with the transportation of oxygen. Like you all know, within our body, 97% of the oxygen is delivered by red blood cells. It has got hemoglobin, so these oxygen, it forms oxyhemoglobin. Whereas the remaining 3% of that oxygen is delivered in a dissolved form, where it gets dissolved in plasma. Whereas on the other hand, carbon dioxide, from tissues, it will be carried by the blood, right, towards the lungs, from where we exhale that carbon dioxide out. So how is this carbon dioxide being carried by the blood? See, nearly 70% of the carbon dioxide is actually delivered in dissolved form. When it dissolves in the plasma, it forms bicarbonate ion. right? Whereas the remaining 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide is delivered. How is it delivered? It is delivered by red blood cell. But then the red blood cell has got more affinity towards oxygen only. Okay, and then I have already mentioned that one red blood cell, it can bind to 4 oxygen molecule. So one hemoglobin can carry 4 oxygen molecule. One hemoglobin can carry 4 oxygen molecule, and then we studied the sigmoidal curve also, which is called as oxygen dissociation curve, and then we studied the factors that influence the formation of oxyhemoglobin or dissociation of oxygen from the hemoglobin, right? So now let's study about the transport of carbon dioxide. See, already have told you now that carbon dioxide, its first preference is, see, they are highly capable for being dissolved in the plasma. Therefore, their first preference is getting dissolved in the plasma. When they get dissolved, it forms bicarbonate, right? Whereas remaining 20 to 25%, it is delivered by red blood cells, right? So we'll study about the transport of carbon dioxide a bit in depth now. See, look at this. They are delivered as dissolved gases in about 7%. Whereas when the carbon dioxide, when it dissolves in the plasma, about 70% of the carbon dioxide dissolves in the plasma and it forms bicarbonate ion. Whereas another 23% of the carbon dioxide has been carried by hemoglobin. I told you, right, that when, so see, I told you that when oxygen combines with hemoglobin, it forms oxyhemoglobin, right? So now when the carbon dioxide combines with hemoglobin, it forms carbaminoglobin. Carbaminoglobin. It forms carbaminoglobin. How much? 23% of the carbon dioxide is been delivered. How? By the hemoglobin. So when it combines with hemoglobin, it forms carbamoglobin. Clear with that? Okay. So now I told you the red blood cells, it contains very high concentration of enzyme, that is carbonic anhydrase. See, your red blood cell, it has got hemoglobin. Along with that, the red blood cell also contains an enzyme which is called as carbonic anhydrase. So till your class 10, till now we have studied that yes, in red blood cells there is a pigment, that is hemoglobin, right? So till now you knew only about that, but now you should understand that along with hemoglobin there is also an enzyme that is present which is called as carbonic anhydrase. Okay, this is the one which helps in delivering the carbon dioxide. So when the carbon dioxide binds to this, see, in a red blood cell there is hemoglobin that is present, but who catalyzes the binding of carbon dioxide with the hemoglobin? It is this carbonic anhydrase. And then what happens? Carbaminohemoglobin will be formed and then the carbon dioxide will be delivered. Okay, clear with that? Okay. See, whereas in tissues, like I told you, in tissues, the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is very high. Now, what is partial pressure? I already explained, right? See, in our atmospheric air, there are mixture of gases, right? Each gas, it exhibits a particular pressure, each gas. Okay, so that particular pressure which has been exerted by individual gas, that is called as partial pressure. So the carbon dioxide exerts certain pressure, oxygen also exerts certain pressure. So that certain pressure is called partial pressure. The partial pressure of carbon dioxide is very high in tissues. Why? Because in tissues, the carbon dioxide concentration is more, right? Whereas oxygen is less. See, because in tissues, like I told you, now let's say the respiration has already happened. So after respiration, what happens? See, the energy is being generated in the form of ATP. Along with that, the carbon dioxide is also released as a byproduct, right? So what happens? The carbon dioxide concentration increases in the tissues, whereas oxygen concentration decreases. So more binding of carbon dioxide occurs. Okay. Then what happens? Whereas in case of in alveoli, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is very less, whereas the partial pressure of oxygen is very high. Therefore, what happens? Here, red blood cell, the carbon dioxide, it gets it gets dissociated from carbaminohemoglobin takes place. I told you, carbaminohemoglobin, when the carbon dioxide combines with the hemoglobin, it forms carbaminohemoglobin, right? So now what happens at the alveolar region, which is present in the lungs? So within lungs, the alveoli is present, and over there the oxygen concentration is more, whereas carbon dioxide concentration is less. Therefore, what happens? The carbon dioxide, it diffuses into the alveoli from blood capillary. So now if it has to diffuse from blood capillary to alveoli, then the carbon dioxide must dissociate from hemoglobin. So in alveoli, where the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is less, over there dissociation of carbon dioxide from carbaminohemoglobin occurs, and then the carbon dioxide which is bound to hemoglobin from the tissue is delivered at the alveoli. That's how in your lungs the deoxygenated blood is getting converted to oxygenated. Now understood the factors that are responsible for the dissociation of this carbaminohemoglobin and also for the dissociation of oxyhemoglobin which occurs in the tissues. Clear with that, right? Okay. So what is happening at tissue site? The partial pressure of carbon dioxide is very high. Like I told you, due to catabolism. So what happens? The carbon dioxide, it diffuses into the blood and it forms bicarbonate and H+, right? And whereas at alveolar site, so in the previous condition we were discussing about, I told you that the carbon dioxide is delivered in three forms. One is in the dissolved gaseous form, and the other one is it binds with the hemoglobin and it forms carbaminohemoglobin. And then the third condition is it is delivered as a dissolved form. So when it dissolves in plasma, it forms bicarbonate. And then what happens at alveolar site? Again, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low. Therefore, what happens? The carbon dioxide that is trapped as a bicarbonate at the tissue level and transported to the alveoli. Clear with that? It is very simple. Here it gets, dissociated. It is just transferred into the alveoli from the blood capillary. Okay, clear with that? Fine. So now every 100 ml of oxygenated blood, it can deliver, I told you, 5 ml of oxygen to the tissues in the normal physiological condition, right? Similarly, every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood will not have oxygen, instead it will be carrying carbon dioxide, right? It delivers approximately 4 ml of carbon dioxide to the alveoli. And then from the alveoli, the carbon dioxide is exhaled out. Clear with this? This is very important. You must remember these values. See, 100 ml of oxygenated blood delivers 5 ml of oxygen to the tissues. Whereas the 100 ml of deoxygenated blood, it delivers 4 ml of carbon dioxide into the alveoli, and from alveoli, the carbon dioxide is exhaled out. Clear with that? Till now, any doubts? Do you have any doubts till now, students? Not just this, but see, in respiration, I've already covered. Human respiratory system is done. Mechanism of breathing is done. Respiratory volume, respiratory capacity is done. Right? And then we have started with exchange of gases, wherein I even covered the transport of oxygen, and now the transport of carbon dioxide is being taught. So till now, in these many concepts, do you have any doubt? In case if you have any doubt, feel free to comment in the comment section. Okay. So now I want you all to answer to this. See, in the process of transport of carbon dioxide, the bicarbonate ions are formed in red blood cells or white blood cells. Where is this bicarbonate ions are formed? Is it red blood cells or white blood cells? Any guesses? Comment in the comment section. Any guesses? What is the answer for this? What's the answer for this, students? See, I told you that carbon dioxide, it can be delivered in three forms. One, as dissolved gaseous, in the dissolved gaseous state. About 7% of the carbon dioxide is delivered in that form. And the second one is, it is delivered in a dissolved state also. wherein the carbon dioxide dissolves in the plasma. When it dissolves in the plasma, it forms bicarbonate, right? And the third one is it is transported by hemoglobin also. So when the carbon dioxide combines with hemoglobin, it forms, what does it form? Carb amino hemoglobin is formed. So here it is not red blood cell. Red blood cell is not the answer. See here, the red blood cell, sorry, it contains enzyme that is carbonic anhydrase that helps in the formation of bicarbonate ion from the carbon dioxide and water. And that's all. Sorry students for this. See, in the process of transport of carbon dioxide, the bicarbonate ions are formed. Yes, sorry for that. I had explained you all right that yes, there is, along with hemoglobin, the red blood cell also carries a enzyme that is called as carbonic anhydrase, right? Yes, it is carbonic anhydrase that helps in the formation of bicarbonate ion from carbon dioxide and water. So it is red, it is not white blood cells. The white blood cell is not involved in the delivery of gaseous molecule in our body. So it is red blood cell. Okay, in case if the plasma was given in the option, in case let's say there is red blood cell and plasma, then the first preference should be given to plasma. But then here red blood cell is given, and I've already explained that yes, in red blood cell there is enzyme that is carbonic anhydrase. So your red blood cell is the right answer. Okay, fine. So now what is carb amino hemoglobin? What is carb amino hemoglobin? See, I told you now that carbon dioxide is also delivered by hemoglobin. So when the carbon dioxide combines with the hemoglobin, it forms carb amino hemoglobin. Okay, nearly 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide is delivered by hemoglobin in this form. Okay, fine. So now I want you all to answer to these questions. So the first one is, how much percent of carbon dioxide is transported in the form of dissolved gas in the plasma, blood plasma? Is it 7% or is it 23% or is it 70% or is it 17%? Is it 7% or is it 23? Or is it 70% or is it 17%? It is 7%. Okay, fine. Then the carbon dioxide is transported via blood to lungs, mostly in combination with hemoglobin only, or is it dissolved in the blood plasma or in the form of bicarbonates, or is it as the carb amino hemoglobin? In which form is the carbon dioxide being transported? Via blood to the lungs? Which form? Is it option A, B, C or D? It is in the form of bicarbonates. Okay, fine. Now the carbon dioxide entering erythrocytes react with the water to form carbonic acid, right? So now the enzyme that catalyzes this reaction is it carbonic anhydrase or is it carbopeptidase or is it hydrolase or is it oxidoreductase? So when I was doing this concept, I told you that see the red blood cell, it has got hemoglobin, along with it also has got an enzyme. Which enzyme is that? Is it option A or option B, option C or option D? Which is that enzyme that is present in the red blood cells? It is your option A, carbonic anhydrase. Okay, Fine. So now identify the correct statement with reference to the transport of respiratory gases by blood. Okay, the option A states that hemoglobin is necessary for transport of carbon dioxide and carbonic anhydrase for transport of oxygen. And then option B states that the hemoglobin is necessary for transport of oxygen and carbonic anhydrase for transport of carbon dioxide. And option C states that only oxygen is transported by blood, and option D states that only carbon dioxide is transported by blood. So which is the right answer? Any guesses? It is your option B. Hemoglobin is necessary for the transport of oxygen and carbonic anhydrase for the transport of carbon dioxide. Both this hemoglobin and carbonic anhydrase is present in red blood cell only. Okay, fine. The direction of concentration gradient for carbon dioxide is it from tissue to blood and blood to alveoli, or is it from blood to tissues and tissues to alveoli, or is it from alveoli to blood and blood to tissues, or is it from tissues to blood and alveoli to blood? This is not the answer. Is it from alveoli to blood and blood to tissue? See, they are asking the direction of concentration gradient for carbon dioxide is from, it is your option A. See, in tissue, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is very high. So what happens? It diffuses from there, from the tissue to the blood, and then the deoxygenated blood, when it reaches alveoli, what happens? In alveoli, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is less, whereas in the blood, the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide will be high. Therefore, from blood, it diffuses into alveoli, and your option A is the right answer. Fine. So we have completed the transport of carbon dioxide. Okay, we are done with this. The exchange of gases. So now let's study about the regulation of respiration. So what is it? See, you all have studied in your control and coordination chapter as well, right? In your class 10th, wherein you studied that within our body also, there are so many organs that are present. And the functioning of each organ is controlled by your central nervous system. Alright, what happens? There is endocrine system and nervous system that controls, right? So particularly this endocrine glands, they secrete certain hormone which regulates the functioning of the particular organ, right? It can initiate, or it can even inhibit the functioning of that particular organ. Why? It's because within our body, every organ will perform particular function, right? And they will have to, carry on in synchronization with each other. Or else, what will happen? If there is no coordination, if there is no proper coordination, the efficiency of that particular function will be very less. And it can cause harm to our body also. Therefore, it is necessary to control the functioning of those organs. Right? Similarly, like in our body, see the respiratory system. The human respiratory system is your lung. It has got, nostrils, pharynx, trachea, and, larynx. Your lung is within lung there is alveoli. Alveoli is the main site for gaseous exchange, right? So now and also then once the blood is converted to oxygenated, then what happens? That oxygenated blood will deliver the oxygen to the tissues in our body, and within tissue the biochemical reaction will happen. So now who controls that, who regulates that respiration? So we'll understand that. Before that, I want you all to answer to this, that how is carbon dioxide transported from tissues to alveoli? From tissues to alveoli, how is it transferred? See, 7% as a dissolved gas, 70% in the bicarbonate ion form, 23% as carb amino hemoglobin. Okay, fine. So like I told you, our respiration, it is regulated. It is regulated, one, neural, and the other one is chemical. Like I told you, see, in control and coordination, you have already studied now that there is nervous system and endocrine system which controls the functioning of organs within our body, right? Similarly here, like I told you, see here our respiration is also controlled by your neural. Neural is nothing but your nervous system, and chemical regulation is nothing but your endocrine system. Okay, so now neural regulation, particularly see in our central nervous, in our brain, see the central nervous system has got brain and spinal cord, right? So now in brain, which part of the brain actually regulates the respiration? It is pons and medulla. Okay, and then chemical regulation, here there are certain chemoreceptor that is present that will regulate the respiration. Okay, we'll study that now. So like I told you, in our brain there is this respiratory rhythm center. Where is this respiratory rhythm center? It is present in the medulla region of the brain. And there is one more center, that is pneumotaxic center. Where is this pneumotaxic center present? That is present in the pons region. So what are they doing? They moderate the function of respiratory rhythm center. Okay, and that's how your respiration is being regulated. Okay, in medulla there is this respiratory rhythm center, and then in the pons there is pneumotaxic center. These two center regulates the, which is present in our brain, it regulates the respiration in our body. Okay, clear with that? And also, like I told you, there are certain chemosensitive area which is present adjacent to the rhythmic center. Nothing but it is present in our brain only, which is very sensitive to carbon dioxide and H plus ions. So the signals the rhythmic center, why? To make necessary adjustment in the respiratory process. So it is that chemosensitive area that is present next to the pons or medulla. Like in the pons there is pneumotaxic center, whereas in the medulla there is respiratory rhythm center, right? So this neurosensitive region, the area, it is present exactly next to that rhythmic center, and it is sensitive to carbon dioxide and H plus ion, and it's because it, therefore it can identify and then it signals the rhythmic center. Okay, clear with that? Fine. Now see, the respiration is controlled and regulated by, is it brain or spinal cord? Is it brain or spinal cord? It is brain, option A. Okay, what is respiratory rhythm center? I want you all to comment answer for this question, that what is respiratory rhythm center? Okay, fine. So now I want you all to answer to these questions. The function of the respiratory rhythm center are moderated by, is it heart, kidney, intestine or pons? Which one? The function of the respiratory rhythm center are moderated by? It is your option D, pons. Okay, next, see, pneumotaxic center is found in, is it cerebrum, pons, medulla or cerebellum? Is it cerebrum, pons, medulla or cerebellum? It is pons. Okay, fine. The rate of breathing is regulated mainly by, is it the muscular function of the body, or is it the stress, or is it the freely available oxygen, or is it the carbon dioxide level in the blood? Which regulates the rate of breathing? It is the carbon dioxide level in the blood. Okay, fine. Now complete the following sentence by selecting the correct option. Okay, so here the breathing rhythm is generated in the first one and is influenced by the variation in the level of this in the blood. So what is correct? So you will have to fill this. See, the breathing rhythm is generated in the dash and is influenced by the variation in the level of dash in the blood. Is it medulla and carbon dioxide, or is it medulla and oxygen, or is it cerebrum? It is not cerebrum. It is not. This is ruled out. See, it is medulla and the level of carbon dioxide. So option A is the right answer. Okay, fine. So now we have come to the last topic, that is the respiratory disorders. Okay, let's study the diseases that is being associated with our respiratory system. Before that, now I want you all to name the centers that help in regulation of respiration in humans. Which center? It is respiratory rhythm center in the medulla and the pneumotaxic center in pons. Okay, clear with that? Fine. So one by one we'll cover the respiratory disorder as well. The first one is asthma. So why does asthma occurs? What causes asthma? It is allergic reaction. So a person suffering from asthma, what is happening in his respiratory system? The excess amount of mucus is secreted in the respiratory tract. And then as a result, what happens here? Bronchi and bronchiole will be clogged. It's because it is loaded with mucus. Because of that, it affects the breathing. Hi Shubham. Okay, fine. And then the second one is emphysema. So emphysema, it is the, what is happening over here is that actually the cause for this emphysema disorder is air pollution or even smoking is the main reason for emphysema. Wherein what happens is that the elasticity of the alveoli is lost. Okay, when the elasticity of the alveoli is lost, the gaseous exchange will not occur properly, right? Again, that will affect our respiration. So emphysema is a condition wherein the alveoli loses its elasticity. Major cause is smoking, whereas the previous one, asthma, was allergic reaction was the major cause, and what was happening? Excess amount of mucus was getting secreted in the respiratory tract, because of which the bronchi and bronchiole was getting clogged. Okay, and the third one is occupational. See here, the people who are working in certain industries, like it can be ceramic industry or even the glass bangles industries. Over there, what happens is that the long exposure to the grinding of stone breaking industries, like inflammation, it leads to fibrosis. Which part you want me to repeat, Shubham? The respiratory diseases part. Here, it is a serious lung disease, okay? It leads to serious lung damage. So the conditions are like, silicosis or asbestosis occur due to chronic exposure to silica and asbestos in the asbestos dust in the mining industry. Asthma. See, asthma is very simple. See, it is caused because of some allergies. Let's say the person is allergic to dust. It is because, or else pollen grains. There are so many people who are actually allergic to pollen grains. So it is because of the allergic reaction the asthma occurs. And when the asthma occurs, what happens is that mucus, right, that jelly-like substance, it will be bit white in color, the jelly-like substance, that gets accumulated more in the respiratory tract. As a result, what happened? The respiratory tract, let's say if this is your, I'll show you that image. See, this is the normal respiratory tract that you can see. Look at this diameter. It is in this path, the air will be delivered, the oxygen will be, flowing in that respiratory tract. Now, let's say that too much of mucus gets accumulated in this respiratory tract. That time what happens? The path becomes very narrow. As a result, for the movement of oxygen, it will become very difficult, right? Because the path is very narrow. As a result, we will not get enough of oxygen. Okay, that's what happens in asthma. Now I told you it is allergic reaction, right? So now let's say you would have not only, you just forget about this, you would have observed this, no? When you inhale, not just you, maybe if you are not allergic to dust, let's say your friends or someone will be allergic to dust. When you inhale that dust, what do? Immediately you sneeze back. And when you sneeze, what happens? Some amount of mucus will also be secreted. So what is that mucus doing? That mucus traps that dust particles, and when you sneeze, that will be thrown out of the body. So when there is allergic reaction, to remove that the particle, too much of mucus will be secreted. So when the too much of mucus is secreted, what happens? It leads to the clogging of bronchi and bronchiole. Clear with that? Okay, you're welcome. Hi, Raghu. Okay, and the other one is occupational. You would have seen, the people working in mines and also working in some industries. For example, one such thing is the glass bangle that you have seen. Even such, they prepare the glass bangle wherein they will have to grind so many stones and all that. While grinding certain stones, some harmful dust will be released. And when the person inhales the dust, even if he protects his, the nose, even if he cover himself with a mask, that is not sufficient. He will get affected by these diseases. Okay, so the third reason is occupational, in case if he is working in mining industries or some industries like wherein the harmful dust particles will be released. That will cause fibrosis. That will lead to fibrosis, and it is a very serious lung damage, right? So two such diseases, one is silicosis and the other one is asbestosis. So silicosis is caused when the person inhales more of silica, and then asbestos is caused when the person inhales asbestos or is working in such industries. Okay, fine. And then bronchitis. Bronchitis, see here, it is the inflammation of your bronchi. So what is the cause for bronchitis? It is majorly it is infection, and even smoking and exposure to pollutants, and also the carbon monoxide, that leads to this bronchitis, where again excess mucus will be secreted. Okay, fine. And then mountain sickness. See here, the ill effect of hypoxia, which is nothing but the shortage of oxygen in the tissues at high altitude. The fall in the atmospheric pressure at higher altitude decreases the partial pressure of inspired oxygen. You all know, right, that the people who are living in hilly region, they will have more hemoglobin in their blood. Why? Because over there the oxygen level is less, but then our body requires oxygen. Therefore, more hemoglobin will be present in their blood, so that the hemoglobin can bind to more oxygen, right? Okay, so now I want you all to answer to this. See here, the asthma is caused due to, is it because of infection or allergy? Is it because of infection or allergy? Asthma. It is because of allergy. Okay, fine. What does occupational respiratory disorder mean? Like I told you, the people who are working in mining industries, they are very much prone to silicosis and asbestosis. It's because, like in such industries, they will have to grind certain stone which releases harmful dust particles. And when the person inhales, see, it's because it is his profession, he have to work, no other go. But then harmful dust will also be released, and somehow he will be inhaled. He will inhale that, the dust particle which is harmful. It's that time it causes that silicosis, asbestosis. These are the two major diseases that has been caused because of, occupation. And nothing but it causes fibrosis, which is a very serious lung damage. Okay? Fine. Now I want you all to answer to these questions. See, emphysema is a condition that is resulting from, is it drug addiction, or is it liquor consumption, or is it cigarette smoking, or is it because of the mining industry? The emphysema. What happens during emphysema? What is happening to the alveoli? It is because of smoking. So a person, let's say, is very much addicted to smoke. What happens is that like the alveoli, the surface is very elastic, right? So it's because of this smoking habit. What happens is that the person who smokes a lot, in their lungs, the alveoli loses its elasticity. Clear? And that leads to a disease that is called as emphysema. Okay, now which of the following option correctly represents the lung condition in asthma and emphysema respectively? See here, the increased number of bronchioles and increased respiratory surface, or is it inflammation of the bronchiole and decreased respiratory surface, or is it increased respiratory surface and inflammation of bronchiole, or is it decreased respiratory surface and inflammation of bronchiole? They're asking asthma and emphysema. In asthma, what is happening? There is clogging that happens in the bronchi and bronchiole. Mucus get accumulated. Nothing but that is your inflammation of bronchioles. And whereas in emphysema, what happens? The elasticity of the alveoli is lost, which means to say that the surface area for the gaseous exchange is lost. So it is your option B is the right answer. Okay. Fine. Now name the pulmonary disease in which the alveolar surface area involved in the gas exchange is drastically reduced due to damage in the alveolar walls. Is it in asthma condition, or is it in emphysema, or is it mountain sickness, or is it pneumonia? It is emphysema. I told you, in emphysema, this disorder is caused, it's because of excess smoking. Okay, that time what happens? The alveoli, the alveolar walls, it loses its elasticity. As a result, the surface area for gaseous exchange is lost. It is your option B, emphysema. Okay, so yeah, we have completed the human respiratory system. So in the previous session, I have already spoken about human respiratory system, that the human respiratory has got a pair of external nostril, it has nasal chamber, pharynx, larynx, trachea, right and left bronchi, secondary, tertiary bronchi, bronchioles, terminal bronchiole and alveoli. I have explained this a bit in depth, right? And then I also told you that how is this glottis helping in, letting the air enter into the windpipe, right? And also the breathing mechanism, we discussed about breathing mechanism as well. And then we spoke about respiratory volume, wherein we spoke about tidal volume. Tidal volume is nothing but it is the amount of air that is being inhaled or the amount of air that is being exhaled during normal breathing. That is your tidal volume, and it is 500. What is inspiratory reserve volume? Inspiratory reserve volume is the amount of air. See, we inhale normal amount of air, a normal volume of air, that is 500. Along with that, we can inhale excess, a bit extra air forcefully. That is your inspiratory reserve volume, which is 2500 to 3000 ml. And then what is expiratory reserve volume? The expiratory reserve volume is, see, you exhale some amount of air. It is 500 under normal breathing. And along with that, you can exhale extra air forcefully. That is your expiratory reserve volume. It ranges from 1000 to 1100 ml. And then residual volume is, see, when you inhale and exhale the air, right? So after you inhale, some amount of air will be stored in the alveoli even after exhaling out. That reserved volume, that is your reserved volume, residual volume. Some amount of air gets reserved in the alveoli. That is your residual volume, which is 1100 to 1200 ml. Okay, and then in today's session we spoke about the exchange, the respiration capacity, and we spoke about the exchange of gases, transport of oxygen, transport of carbon dioxide, and we spoke about the regulation of respiratory system, and then we also spoke about the respiratory disorders, right? So this is all about human respiratory system. Students, if you have any doubts, feel free to comment in the comment section and I'll get back to you. Right? So this is it for today's session. In the next session, we'll be starting with the kingdoms, the 5 kingdom classification, plant kingdom, animal kingdom. See, already you have studied that the diversity in living organism. You had this chapter in your class 9th, right? The same concept is there in your class 11th as well, but then here it is divided into 3 chapters. One is 5 kingdom classification, there is plant kingdom and animal kingdom. So we'll be starting with those chapters from the next session. So this is it for today's session. In case if you have any doubt, feel free to comment in the comment section. Right? So yeah, thank you all and have a great day.